I have a confession. I've never played a Dragon Age game in my life. Zero experience with Origins, Inquisitions, none of it. Honestly, I was never interested until I randomly caught a gameplay trailer for Dragon Age the Veilguard right before launch. Suddenly, I was interested, very interested. Here was this visually stunning, action-packed RPG that looked like it had depth and height. So, I decided to take the plunge and see if the Veilguard could hook someone completely new to the series like me. Thanks to EA for providing me with the code, but I'm here as a complete newcomer, no fan bias or lore knowledge. Just a fresh set of eyes. What's it like to step into a world you know nothing about, in a franchise that has a decade's worth of history? Does it stand alone as a game that could pull in someone who's never touched Dragon Age? Let's dive into my very first impressions of the Veilguard. When I first launched the game, I felt that rush of stepping into a completely new world. The Veilguard doesn't just look good, it looks intentional. This game world doesn't have the same photorealistic approach some other big budget game go for. Instead, it's almost painterly, like every tree, shadow and stone was crafted to draw you deeper into its world. There's an art style here that feels unique, just the right mix of fantasy and realism. It's enchanting really, and for someone like me who loves RPGs for their ability to transport you, this is an amazing first impression. Sure, it's not for everyone, but it works for me. On a technical note, I'm running this on PC with a 4070 Ti fully maxed out at 1440p. With all settings cranked up, I'm getting between 90 to 140 FPS, which is as smooth as it gets, even in intense zones. It's immersive, and the technical polish is there. It's the kind of visual detail that pulls you in and makes you want to explore every inch of the map, just to see what you'll find around the corner. There's a grand sense of scale here that I didn't expect, which has been a pleasant surprise as I take my first steps in Tedas, the continent where the game takes place.
The tremors are getting worse.
And we've got demons.
Now, my instinct was to reach for my mouse and keyboard. Maybe because I always thought of Dragon Age as a game more intended for that. And honestly, looking at gameplay from previous installments, I get that confirmation. And it's what I expected the Veilguard would be designed for. But within minutes, I realized this game was created with the controller in mind. Sure, you can play it on keyboard and mouse, but there's something about it that just feels better with a controller. It was definitely created with controller in mind. That said, the keyboard and mouse aren't totally out of the question, especially for combat. This is one of those games where combat has a lot of layers. There are multiple inputs to remember, combos to chain, abilities to activate. The mouse and keyboard setup can actually make it easier to manage all those options because of how accessible everything is. It's a bit of a strange dynamic actually. The controller feels better, but the keyboard and mouse is definitely not out of the question. Let's now talk combat. The Veilguard does not hold your hand. I'm playing as a human warrior with a focus on melee combat, and even with a straightforward build focused on damage and stagger, I had to put in the work to get comfortable. Combat in Veilguard is fast, it's demanding, and every encounter feels like it's testing you. Timing and positioning are crucial, and you need to stay alert to survive. For someone like me, who had no idea what Dragon Age combat was like, this was both refreshing and challenging at the same time. But I have a feeling this is not how it was in the past, according to some stuff I've been reading. I'm also playing on the underdog difficulty, which is the second highest in the game. Enemies come in different types, and they might require a different approach. I went in thinking it would be a bit more button mashy, but I quickly realized that wasn't going to cut it. You can just slash away and hope for the best. Instead, I had to learn when to block, when to dodge, or how to combine my abilities to take down tougher foes. Once I got the hang of it though, I found a satisfying flow. Enemies can be a bit spongy though. There's a definite learning curve here, and it took me a while to get comfortable. But there's something rewarding about a combat system that makes you work for it. You feel yourself getting better, mastering the mechanics, and by the end of each fight, you get a satisfying sense of accomplishment. Still, there's this little worry in the back of my mind. If combat doesn't evolve or introduce new elements as I go, it could start to feel repetitive after a while. It's early yet, at least for me, but I'll be keeping an eye on how they keep things fresh. Now, for something I didn't expect.
You said something.
For a game that paints this dark, chaotic world on the edge of collapse, the character interactions feel almost overly
And it's
positive.
still with you.
Every character I meet seems focused on keeping morale up, like they're part of a motivational seminar instead of a crumbling society. There's this odd contrast between the world around us, which is filled with danger, decay and desperation, and the attitude of the people within it. It's almost as if they haven't fully grasped how dire things are. On one hand, I get it. They're probably trying to inject some hope into the story. But as someone new to the world of Dragon Age, it feels a bit strange. A bit awkward, really. I wanted to feel the tension, the uncertainty, and even the fear of living in a world that's falling apart. Instead, I'm getting optimism, and while that's not inherently a bad thing, it does make the world feel slightly off-kilter. Maybe this is part of the Dragon Age identity, but for a newcomer like me, it stands out in a way that feels a bit jarring.
And we need more answers about what the gods are planning. I'll find some place to relax and try to reach solace in the Fade.
Good luck. Try not to let him get to you.
As it stands, with my 13 to 14 hours played, the gameplay loop is engaging. There's a nice balance between exploring the world, engaging in story and getting into combat, and it keeps me wanting to see what's next. But there's a big question mark in my mind. Can it keep this up for a long haul? It's something that every RPG has to address. How do you keep the player engaged after the initial shine wears off? Right now, combat and exploration are holding my attention, but if I'm being honest, I'm a bit cautious. If the game doesn't continue to evolve, I could see the core loop starting to feel repetitive. Also, it's way more linear than I was expecting. I always pictured it as a semi-open world, and I don't really know why. Maybe that was a bad interpretation on my part. That said, the story has a strong enough pull so far, and as long as it keeps introducing new elements, I think there's potential for it to stay interesting. There's this sense that I've barely scratched the surface, and I'm genuinely curious to see where it goes.
Closest to the stone and find me.
Honey, what's wrong? What are you hearing?
I'm sorry.
For someone with zero background in the series like me, the Veilguard has been a pleasant surprise. It's not perfect. There are quirks like the odd character positivity, and I'm cautiously optimistic about the longevity of the combat. But it's a solid RPG with enough depth to keep me hooked. The visuals, the scope, the atmosphere, it all combines to create something that feels immersive and purposeful. And even as someone who knows nothing about Dragon Age lore, I haven't felt lost or left out. This game is accessible, and it's rich enough that you feel like you're discovering a whole new world on your own. So, for any of you out there who, like me, have never touched a Dragon Age game before and are wondering if the Veilguard is a good entry point, I'd say yes. There's enough here to make it a worthwhile experience on its own without needing to know what came before. And who knows, I might just find myself exploring the previous games once I'm through with this one. For now, I'm invested and I'm excited to see where this journey takes me. So if you're even just a little bit curious like I was, give it a shot. You might just find yourself as unexpectedly drawn as I have.